The SS officer stood in front of the locked barracks with one hand on the iron key ring and refused to move even after Patton's staff car stopped beside the yard. And every prisoner nearby knew that something behind that door was worth more than his rank, because the windows had been covered from inside. The morning count was suddenly wrong, and a thin line of fresh blood had dried beneath the threshold before anyone admitted a man was missing. Patton arrived at the camp just after sunrise, expecting a routine inspection of prisoners who had been captured during the final collapse of German lines. The yard had already been swept, the guards were lined in clean helmets, and the command office displayed neat reports on rations, discipline, and medical checks. The only thing that did not match the inspection was Barracks 7. It stood at the far side of the compound, away from the work sheds, with its windows covered by dark blankets and two armed men posted at the steps. A German SS officer wearing a stripped-down field jacket stood before the door as if he owned the building. An American major explained that the SS officer had been used as an internal prisoner leader because he could control the harder German captives. Patton looked at the locked door, then at the major, and asked why an enemy officer was guarding a barracks inside an American camp. The major claimed Barracks 7 held disciplinary prisoners who were being kept apart after a fight, but his answer came too quickly. Patton ordered the door opened, and the SS officer lifted his chin, tightened his grip around the key ring, and said the men inside were not ready for inspection. The yard changed at once. American guards shifted their rifles, German prisoners stopped moving toward the wash line, and a medic carrying bandages paused near the infirmary tent. Patton stepped closer to the SS officer and ordered him again to open the barracks. The SS officer refused a second time, this time in English, saying that any disturbance could cause violence among the prisoners. He spoke as if he were warning the Americans rather than obeying them, and several German POWs near the fence lowered their eyes when they heard his voice. Patton ordered the prisoner leader disarmed, but the guard captain hesitated because the key was still in the SS officer's hand. In that brief delay, a weak thud came from inside the barracks, followed by a scraping sound against the lower wall. The SS officer turned his head only slightly, but the movement exposed him. An American lieutenant stepped to the rear of the building and found straw packed against the lower boards. When he pulled it away, he saw scratches cut into the wood from the inside, along with a small piece of cloth pushed through a crack. The cloth carried a prisoner number written in pencil. Patton took the cloth without speaking and ordered the morning roster brought into the yard. The clerk arrived with a folder and began reading names, but 3 numbers from Barracks 7 received no answer, even though the roster marked them present and fit for work. The SS officer suddenly tried to hand the key to the American major instead of Patton, as if choosing who had authority. Patton struck the major's hand away before he could take it, then ordered 2 MPs to remove the key ring from the SS officer in front of every prisoner watching. When the key finally turned, it did not open the door. A second bolt had been fixed from the outside and covered with a strip of painted wood. Patton looked at the American officers around him, and the inspection became something else entirely before the first board was even torn away. Subscribe for more forgotten German POW stories like this one. The MPs ripped off the hidden strip and exposed a fresh metal slide bolt that had no place on any official barracks plan. The guard captain claimed it had been added for safety after the fight, but the screws were new, the paint was wet near the edges, and the carpenter's box was still under the steps. Patton ordered the carpenter brought forward, and the man admitted he had installed the bolt the previous night under orders from the prisoner leader. When asked who allowed an SS officer to modify an American prison barracks, the carpenter pointed not to the SS officer, but toward the command office. The camp commander arrived with 2 files under his arm and tried to move the inspection indoors, away from the prisoners. Patton refused and ordered the files opened on a crate in the yard. One file listed Barracks 7 as disciplinary housing, while the other still listed it as a regular sleeping unit with 42 prisoners assigned. The numbers broke the first lie. Only 36 men from Barracks 7 stood outside in the count line, and 3 of them carried bruises on their faces that had not been recorded by the infirmary. The medic checked them in public and found one man's jaw swollen enough to make speech painful. The SS officer claimed the men had fought each other, but a German prisoner from another barracks suddenly stepped out of line and held up a hidden spoon handle sharpened into a small scraping tool. He said it had been passed through the latrine trench that morning with one message scratched onto it, saying that the door must be opened before night. Patton ordered the barracks searched from the outside first. MPs pulled down the window blankets and found each pane smeared with soap and ash to block vision. Behind one window, a handprint had dried against the glass from the inside, and the fingers were too small to belong to a strong man standing upright. The guard captain finally opened the door, but the SS officer stepped forward as if to enter first. Patton grabbed his sleeve and stopped him before he crossed the threshold. The first men inside the building were MPs and medics, not guards, not prisoner leaders, and not anyone who had helped keep it closed. Inside, the bunks had been dragged into a wall across the center aisle, forming a barrier that divided the building in two. On the near side were ordinary blankets and tins, arranged to look controlled. On the far side, behind the bunks, several prisoners sat on the floor with their boots missing and their hands wrapped in dirty cloth. A medic called for stretchers, and the yard erupted into movement. MPs pushed prisoners back. The lieutenant started a new list of names, and Patton ordered every man from Barracks 7 separated from every camp staff member until the truth of the locked room was recorded. The first rescued prisoner could barely walk, but he pointed toward a loose plank under the last bunk. An MP lifted it and found a bundle of papers tied with wire, complaint notes, names of suspected informers, and a hand-drawn chart showing which prisoners had been beaten after refusing orders from the SS officer. The escalation widened when the chart included not only German prisoners, but the initials of 2 American guards who had allowed the SS officer to run the barracks at night. Patton ordered those guards arrested at once, and their rifles were taken in front of the same prisoners they had helped silence. The SS officer lost his first layer of power when the key ring was placed on the evidence crate beside the forged files. He no longer stood as a barracks leader. He stood as the man who had refused to open the door because the door had been hiding a system, not a fight. The major consequence came when the rescued men were moved to the infirmary tent and the camp count was performed by face instead of roster. For names marked present were missing, 2 men marked transferred were found inside Barracks 7, and 1 prisoner listed as dead from illness had no burial record at all. Patton ordered the burial register, punishment ledger, and infirmary book placed side by side on a mess table. The 3 books disagreed with one another so badly that the camp clerk began rewriting numbers without being told, and an MP caught his wrist before the pencil touched the page. The clerk broke first. He admitted that the SS officer had been used to identify anti-Nazi prisoners, former deserters, and men who had spoken to American interrogators. Those men were then moved into Barracks 7, where the prisoner leader punished them while American staff called it internal discipline. A second prisoner was carried from the barracks with a fever and a torn sleeve wrapped around his ribs. The medic cut away the cloth and found a paper tag pinned beneath it, not a medical tag, but a warning written in German that marked him as a traitor to the Reich. That discovery changed the crowd. Men who had feared the SS officer began pointing toward others who had helped him. MPs moved quickly through the yard, separating 3 German prisoner assistants from the main group before the camp erupted into revenge. Patton ordered no prisoner punishment, no private retaliation, and no hidden questioning. He had a line of tables set across the yard and made every witness speak to an interpreter in public view while clerks recorded names, dates, and visible injuries. The SS officer tried to claim the accusations were political lies invented by weak men seeking American favor. Patton answered by ordering him placed beside the evidence, not in a tent and not behind a desk. He had the warning tags, hidden notes, key ring, bolt, and false roster arranged where every witness could point without approaching him. The American major who had defended the arrangement attempted to explain that using the SS officer kept order among dangerous prisoners. Patton turned the explanation against him by ordering the injured men's bedding carried into the yard. Blood marked 3 blankets, and 1 blanket had been folded to hide a broken wooden club inside. The club carried carved notches along its handle. A prisoner interpreter said each notch was made after a beating. The SS officer denied it, but one of his own German assistants suddenly admitted that the club had been kept under the leader's bunk as a symbol of control. Patton relieved the American major from duty in front of the camp and ordered him confined to quarters under guard. The major consequence became official when the camp's internal prisoner leadership system was suspended immediately, stripping every SS-aligned prisoner of authority in every barracks. Then a truck from the records office arrived with transfer files that had been prepared for the next morning. Barracks 7's injured men were scheduled to be removed before a Red Cross inspection, labeled as troublemakers, and sent to another facility without medical notes. Patton signed an order stopping all transfers from the camp, locking down every file cabinet, and placing MPs at the office doors. The refusal to open one barracks had now frozen the entire camp administration, and every officer understood that no paper could protect them until the missing men were found. The major reversal began when one of the missing men was not found in Barracks 7 or the infirmary, but in the chapel storage room behind stacked hymnals and broken chairs. He was alive, wearing a stolen work coat, and holding a packet of documents wrapped against his chest with strips of blanket. The man had not escaped from punishment. He had escaped with proof. Inside the packet were carbon copies of letters sent to outside inspectors, a list of anti-Nazi prisoners targeted by the SS group, and a signed note from an American officer allowing the prisoner leader to maintain German order by necessary means. The officer named in the note was not the relieved major. It was the camp commander. Patton had him brought from the command office to the yard while the rescued prisoner sat under medical care with the documents still visible on the table beside him. The commander claimed the note had been misunderstood, but the chapel prisoner identified his signature and described where the original file had been hidden. MPs searched the commander's desk and found the matching original sealed inside a tobacco tin under a false drawer bottom. The power in the yard reversed completely. The SS officer had looked like the center of the crime, but the documents showed he had been given power by Americans who wanted discipline without responsibility. Patton ordered the commander's sidearm removed and placed beside the SS officer's key ring. An unexpected movement near the supply shed almost shattered the investigation. 2 German prisoners loyal to the SS officer grabbed a witness and tried to drag him behind the laundry carts, but MPs and anti-Nazi prisoners rushed together to stop them before knives hidden in boot seams could be used. Patton ordered the loyalists separated, searched, and marched to a different enclosure under armed guard. Their removal changed the prisoner crowd for the first time, because the men who had been afraid to speak now stepped forward with names, hiding places, and details about night calls inside Barracks 7. A medic then uncovered the strongest proof. One injured prisoner had a folded scrap of the commander's memo sewn inside his sleeve, where he had hidden it after stealing it from the SS officer's bunk. The memo ordered that politically unreliable Germans be isolated from inspectors and prevented from influencing other prisoners. Patton forced the commander to stand beside the SS officer while that line was read aloud. The German prisoners watched the 2 men share the same evidence table, 1 enemy officer and 1 American commander joined by the same paper trail. The reversal became visible when Patton ordered the rescued prisoners moved into the command dining room, not as guests, but as protected witnesses. Clean bedding was placed on the polished floor, medics set up examination stations, and MPs guarded the doors from the outside. The humiliated commander stood in the yard while his own office typewriter was carried out and matched to the forged transfer orders. Each letter strike was tested against the documents, and the same broken R appeared on the order that would have moved the injured men before inspection. By sunset, the SS officer who refused to open the barracks was no longer the only accused man. Patton ordered both the German leader and the American commander held for formal investigation, turning the camp's hidden hierarchy inside out and proving that the locked door had protected guilty men on both sides of the wire. The final irreversible event began during the night search of the old coal shed, where MPs found a drainage cover that had been loosened from below. A tunnel had not been dug for escape. It had been used to pass papers, tools, and orders between Barracks 7 and the supply lane without crossing the open yard. Inside the tunnel entrance, an MP found a metal tube wrapped in oilcloth. The tube contained the missing burial note for the prisoner listed as dead, along with a map marking a shallow grave beyond the east fence near the tree line. Patton ordered floodlights moved to the field at once. The grave was opened under medical supervision before dawn. It contained not a murdered body, as many feared, but a prisoner who had been buried under a false name after dying from untreated illness. His real tag had been removed, and the tag in the file belonged to one of the living men found inside Barracks 7. That discovery made the crime permanent in a way no forged roster could undo. The dead man's identity had been stolen to hide the living witness scheduled for transfer, and the entire paperwork system had been twisted to make men disappear without changing the total count. Patton ordered every prisoner tag inspected, every grave marker checked, and every barracks roster suspended until verified by fingerprint, medical record, and witness identification. No man in the camp could be moved, buried, punished, or reassigned by paper alone again. The SS officer attempted one final act of control when he refused to identify the dead man, even though several prisoners said he knew the name. Patton brought the rescued chapel witness to the field, and the witness identified the dead prisoner by a broken tooth, a wedding ring hidden in his sock, and a prayer card folded inside his coat. The field became the final courtroom of the story. The commander, the SS officer, the loyalist prisoners, and the arrested American guards were made to stand apart under MP guard while the dead man's correct name was written into the record and spoken aloud before the whole camp. An army photographer documented the grave, the false tag, the tunnel entrance, the broken bolt, the SS officer's key ring, and the forged transfer papers. The evidence no longer depended on frightened witnesses or damaged ledgers. It had become physical, numbered, sealed, and ready for court. Patton ordered the SS officer removed from the prisoner compound and placed under special guard as a war criminal suspect, separate from ordinary POWs. The American commander was taken away in the same convoy, stripped of command before the prisoners who had watched him hide behind procedure. Before sunrise, Patton returned to Barracks 7 and ordered the door removed from its hinges. He had the hidden bolt cut free, tagged as evidence, and loaded beside the tunnel tube, false tags, forged orders, and the command memo that had created the system. The final irreversible act came when Patton signed a field order abolishing all SS prisoner leadership positions across the camp and reopening every disciplinary case created under their authority. The SS officer had refused to open one barracks, but by morning that refusal had opened the entire camp. When the convoy left, the SS officer sat under armed guard in the first truck, and the former commander rode behind him with his cap removed and his hands empty. Barracks 7 stood open with no door, no bolt, and no prisoner leader at the steps. The dead man's true name was written into the camp record before noon, and from that day forward, no officer could use a locked barracks, a false roster, or an SS prisoner's authority to make a man disappear again. Most people know how World War II ended. Very few know what happened inside these prison camps. Subscribe for more untold WWII stories.